I am Martin from DrGiggy, and this is part 2. And I'm going to flop a nice in. I'm actually going to check that one. Still debating between check raising and check calling. I'm actually going to check raise small and then go broke. I think he's going to bet like every single bluff basically 100% of the time when I check on that board in a 3-bet pot. So I do win a nice little bet a lot, and I think he's going to bet stuff like tens and jacks with no heart for protection purposes. And when I check raise, since it's not that usual, especially given the fact that he did make it so small, he's going to convince himself that I have like the naked ace of hearts from time to time and just go broke with those hands that I have absolutely crushed. And I mean, check calling would not really be a mistake, but I'm just going to shove and hope that he has exactly what I said, like eights, nines, tens, or jacks here, and I think by shoving here I can represent like the ace of hearts pretty well. I think he's going to call with worse. And he did flop the nut flush, so I was fucked. I was absolutely fucked from the very beginning of the hand. But yeah, I could have just I could just lead and then go broke on that flop. But I feel like this is the type of board that I am going to give up so often on it that when I check, he's going to bet all of his nothing at all most of the time. So I think I get a nice small bet of value pretty much every single time when I check. And he did bet. So keeping in mind that I think he is going to bet like for protection purposes stuff like I said, like tens and jacks and nines pretty often. I decided that since his bet was so small, he would level himself quite some time thinking that I'm bluffing but when I'm check raising there, because he would probably think that I'm leading out with most of my made hands. Could have just like check call, then check called, since I do have the jack of hearts, and that was basically my initial plan if it was going to any sort of normal sizing. But I just felt he was a bit weaker there, and I just felt that he could level himself into calling down with a weaker hand than my jack queen when he bets smaller. My check call is going to be good quite a lot because I think he's going to barrel as a bluff if he has any sort of aggressivity in himself. But yeah, because of his sizing, decided to check raise, and then on the turn, nice brick turn, I decided to just shove and try to look like I have like the ace of hearts myself. I know he's going to have a bit of showdown value pretty much every single time because if he is playing that hand on the flop after my check raise and all he has is like the ace of hearts or a big combo draw, I think he's going to just jam pretty much every single time just because I could have uh, air in my range, and he does have some full equity, and he doesn't want to see a turn basically and lose much of his equity with like the ace of hearts there. So I think he's going to just jam all of those hands. So I read him on something that has some showdown value, and by just jamming the turn, I think I can look like the ace of hearts once again. Uh, but we will never know if that would have worked because he just had flopped the absolute nuts, and I was not going anywhere at any point in that hand anyways. So kind of sucked. I think it is totally a cooler situation when I'm in such an aggressive mode, such an aggressive game against someone who I think has realized that I'm in an aggressive mode as well. I'm going to bet that for value because I think that if I check, I'm going to have to give up the pot pretty much every single time. It's just gonna suck. I think I prefer like balancing a bit by leading, and then this guy just pots, and there are no draws out there. I don't think I can do anything other but fall no matter what happens. And here, this is really sexy. Pretty dry board. This is definitely a spot where I think raising would be a gigantic mistake. Still two players in the hand. I do want them to come along. If they have like an ace or flush draw, just put more money in the pot. And if I raise, I look so strong with so many players to act behind me. I think this guy could make some big folds with like ace king, if ace king or ace queen if I raise right away on the flop. And by slow playing on the flop with like so many players to play behind me and stuff, because he probably thinks that I'm gonna raise sixes and eights. The strength of my hand is so well concealed that he's probably that's kind of sucks. But if he has a flush at the same time, he's not gonna fold now. But yeah, the strength of my hand is pretty well concealed right now. In theory, I don't have a lot of flushes in my range, just because I'm not calling the turn once again with like a naked flush draw. But he probably doesn't know that I basically don't have any flushes in my range. Uh, I'm just gonna shove, of course. Hope he calls with worse. I think he's going to make a lot of big folds. I think he's just like check folding ace king because of the flush getting there. And I would have definitely turned something like ace jack into a bluff there 100% of the time, uh, because I just feel like he has ace king or ace queen so often, and he's going to check fold that very often on that type of board, because what else could I have basically if I shove here than a flush or a big hand? So this is a spot where I could have played, if you change my cards for ace queen or ace jack, I play it the exact same way, and I'm turning my hand into a bluff on the river, basically just to make him fold ace king mostly, and I think he's folding it pretty much every single time, especially with the river being at 10. I could have ace 10 myself, so that adds a bit more power to my bluff, I think. So this is cool. We're a bit deep, so I'm just gonna try to set mine that guy and miss. So yeah, I think the river totally sucked, because I think if the river is a brick, he is shoving ace king for value, because I don't have that many, especially with the 8th pairing on turn. I don't have that many really strong hands in my range, so he's not really cautious about a stronger hand. And yep. Of course, if you have any questions about any hand that is going to be played, that is being played in that video, post your questions in the forums. This is obviously a bit special since I'm playing 6 tables. I might miss some spots, or I know I'm not explaining like any pre-flop plays, but I don't mind like skipping the pre-flop part basically. Come on, Josh. Josh, 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 Josh. Josh. But yeah, if you have any question about anything that I skipped, or even something that I explained with not much facility, which happens from time to time, just ask them in the forums, of course. This is pretty close. I could bet again, and I think that is what I'm gonna do. This guy looks like a fish. Sorry. Gonna bet pretty small. I'm definitely getting value from all the other tens, like Jack 10, or well, no, or King 10 is going to call the flop, or like Egg 10. River is not a good card, of course. I'm valuing myself against a queen, but I don't mind that, because I do get some value from all of the flush draws on the turn as well. So I prefer valuing a bit thinner on turn and just like check and reevaluating, which is, I think, most people's standard line there. He did have King 10. I did get some pretty nice thin value on the turn. As a general rule of thumb, basically, as you can see, I prefer betting most of the time than just checking. And I think it's better, as a general rule of thumb, when you're hesitating between checking and betting. As soon as you're against someone that is not going to make any big plays if you bet, like, let's say I'm in that spot, but I'm against someone that if I bet, I know he could raise me as a bluff with weaker hands and stuff. As soon as I can rule out that possibility, that kind of possibility, it makes it so much easier for me to just bet, and go for big bluffs, go for a thin value, just bet, kind of like Isildur-ish style. Like, I'm not anywhere close to Isildur, of course, but kind of is that kind of approach to the game of just betting everything. That sucks. I really, really, really feel like this guy is weak right now. And he's just like, oh, he's raised pretty big. I thought it was a bit smaller. Being that big, I think he has something pretty much all the time. But I still think my C bet shows a profit, so I don't mind. missing it. But yeah, as a general approach to the game, just betting for bluffs, for big value, for thin value, for whatever, it just makes it so tough for you to play against. And there's a way to counter that, and it's by raising a lot of like turns, raising some rivers, raising a lot of flops against someone who is going to do that. But as soon as I'm not against players who are going to raise me a lot on flop turns and river, just because I have so many weakish, mediocre hands in my range at those points in the hands, I'm still willing to just bet. When I'm against that type of player who is going to raise me quite a lot, I'm going to change gears and just like either check every flop when I'm deep, when I'm out of position, or stuff like that. Put myself into more of a check calling mode because he couldn't. When I put myself into more of a check calling mode, someone that would normally use position more to his own advantage can no longer do it as much. So I'm kind of taking that a bit away from him. He still has advantage because he is in position, and I'm just check calling, and he has the last action, but a bit less than if I like bet everything that is kind of weak in my range, and he could represent some stronger hands and stuff like that. I don't know if you get my point, but yeah, that's pretty much it. And I just got distracted by a funny river run. I'm watching Take Chip grind just beside of me, and he had fours in a big pot. He doesn't want me to tell you what he had. Whatever. And nothing is happening right now. And I can take a break. I'm gonna take a nice gulp of water. Try to make as much noise as possible while drinking the water. Feel like I'm kind of disconnected. No, stuff is still happening. Just a dead moment in time. And yeah, I don't remember any hands that I could come back on for now. So I'm just gonna hope something interesting happens pretty soon. Fold. Still nothing. Like everyone decided to don't do anything at the same time. I'm gonna try to get entertained by the Glen Lake table. There's a big pot brewing out there. Any fault, and I don't. I wanted a showdown. I could put you some music. It could be nice. Or I could sing. Da 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 da. Hey. Da 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 da. Hey hey. Fa da 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 da. Hey. Da 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 da. Hey. Hey. Da 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 da. Haha. Hey. I really hope something happens. I planned on doing that at 2 parts video, and it's still my plan. So I think I have like 25, 30 minutes more to go to make that 2 part. I'm going to 3-bet that because I'm so fucking bored. Oh, suited connectors. It's a bit easier to play poker when you don't have the nuts on every single hand, as you can see. And that was a very quick 4-bet. And I feel like this guy is really full of shit very often. If I was suited, I would definitely shove. But I don't like my equity with ace 4 because it's either ace king or nothing at all pretty often. And most of the time my feelings are right on that type of timing, whether he's like 4-bet bluffing or whatever. But here I think that it's still ace king a nice decent amount of the time. And and ace 4 just sucks. If I had like ace 4 suited, I probably would have shoved. Something like jack 10 suited, I definitely would have shoved, but I would not have 3 bet. But yeah, something like that, you get the point. But yeah, I decided to just skip it because of the ace 4 offsuit. Pretty fun that a lot of interesting spots happened so far, but it now sucks that absolutely nothing is happening. Part 1 must have been really nice compared to part 2. 3 bet, fold, win the blinds. Raise, fold, win the blinds. I should prepare myself some like jokes for dead moments in that kind of video. Pocket nines raise, call, fold, raise ace 4. Oh, Josh. All in. Bad beat. Fold. This guy looks like he doesn't have a clue what he's doing, so I'm just going to go for value. 3 streets, 3 smallish streets most of the time. He calls so fast. Yeah, I think this is definitely a like 3 smallish streets type of situation. I would probably just bet big and shove river if I was bluffing there because I think he's pretty weak and he's going to have like either ace high or a pocket between 4, 5, 6, 8 a lot, or like ace 3, pair of threes that he's going to call or whatever, but not, especially when he calls the flop that fast, not a lot of hands can handle his whole stack, all of his money basically. I don't think he's floating that thin, so I don't think check calling the turn has any more upsides than betting again. But against a bad player, bottom line is I am going to play with my bet sizing quite a lot there on turn and river here, since like I said, this is a spot where he is he is weakish. He has a mediocre holding most of the time. Uh, and like I said, he rarely will call down his whole stack with that kind of holding. When I'm for value, I will tend to just go small, and when I'm bluffing, I will tend to just go big without any thought of having to balance that basically just because I don't have to, just because he's bad, so he doesn't have a clue what's happening. But playing with the bet size and the sizes in that kind of situation is definitely important in my mind, because I kind of talked about it quite a bit in my Size Does Matter series. But you can basically, if you have a good grasp on your opponent's game and your opponent's thinking level, you can most of the time just manipulate them into doing pretty much whatever you want with the bet sizing. And here, since I thought, from what I know of his game, etc., he's going to have a weak holding most of the time, I'm going to go small for value and big as a bluff. And in other situations, if it's a board where the guy, if he's calling no matter what sizing I'm going with, no matter what, I don't have a board in mind, but there are a lot of situations like that. Then I would go big for value, small as a bluff. And as soon as you don't, as soon as you're not too transparent, and as soon as you're not against someone who is going to notice that right away, this is perfectly fine. I decide to bet that flop because I do think I'm getting called by a lot worse because it's a king high board and I'm c-betting it like 100% of the time with my air anyways. So I do think he's gonna call with any pair of sevens and any pocket between like 8, 9, 10, sometimes even sixes. But with the ace getting there on the turn now, I don't think I can get a call from any weaker hands. He could have like ace queens from time to time. He's gonna have a king. He's not gonna fold the king. He's gonna fold everything else anyways. So I don't see any upsides in betting that. And I don't think he like the other good thing about checking is that I do think I still have a couple of good strong hands in my range when I check the turn. Like it's not an obvious bluff for him, easy bluff for him when I check the turn to do on the river, like to turn every single hand he can into a bluff because I could have like ace low that decided to check the turn because we are deep and I want a pot control. I can represent that. I can represent something like ace queen, not ace queen, but king queen as well, and that would definitely call the river from time to time. Uh, Now the flush draw did miss. I feel like he's gonna have a 6 of clubs, pocket nines from time to time, some ace queens sometimes too. I just don't feel like I can call profitably there. Since I do have some good hands left in my range, and bottom line is I am betting my air close to 100% of the time there, so it leaves me with stuff with showdown value pretty much every single time. And I would have to be against someone who is trying to make me fold something like I had with kind of a made hand himself, pretty high level thinking. I don't know if he's capable of doing that. So I decided to just give up. Decided to bet the ace high board because I do think I get one street of value from some hands like tens and nines and stuff like that. Uh, if he has an ace, by checking, I'm kind of lost anyways, and I will have to play at least one street, but I open the door a lot more for multi-barrel bluffs that I don't know how I would react to, so that would totally suck being me if I just check and then he starts betting and then I don't know what to do. I just like balancing my range a bit more by like just betting pretty much every single thing that I'm gonna play there. I'm gonna check again. I don't think I can represent the 9. He's not gonna believe me anyways. I don't think I can bluff him out an ace, and I don't think I have any value. I'm just gonna check, reevaluate, and realize how much it sucks as a spot. The only thing I'm beating right now is like naked flush draw, nothing at all, and it's not a big part of anyone's range there, of course. And I think he's betting it on the turn most often anyways, if he has no showdown value at all, so this is pretty obvious fold. I did. You still have to consider about calling from time to time in that type of situation. At least think about it. But yeah, was not a good spot to do so. Here I do think he's going to fold a lot of pocket pairs if I fire pretty big on the turn. I am not going to go for 3 barrels because I do think he has a lot of queens on his range, which explains why I'm going a bit bigger on the turn. This is another spot where I'm going to vary my bet sizings to manipulate my opponent. Decided to bet the flop because, yeah, whatever, I don't really have showdown value and he's calling with a lot of weakish hands pre-flop. So I just want to win the pot right away, basically, and he calls. Now I think he has a queen, a 7, or any pocket pair pretty much every single time. That's pretty much his range. Sometimes like weird ace king or ace queen too. Um, I'm still not sure if I would have bet if the turn was not on hard. Still think I would have bet because he's folding a lot of that range on the turn. And since this is a spot where I know that my second barrel is going to be my last because I don't really like just barreling off uh, my ass there because he's going to be slow playing a queen really often and I want just like bluff 200 big blinds into a queen here when it's pretty evident that he's going to have that very pretty often anyway. My last barrel, like I said, is my second barrel. So I want to make my last barrel as big as possible for him to fold as many hands as possible. If it was a spot that I would plan on 3 barreling, I would like bet smaller on the flop, a bit smaller on the turn, just to keep some weaker hands in his range, basically. Uh, yeah, keep weaker hands in his range so I can make him fold as much as possible of his range on my last barrel, like build a bigger pot that you can with him having the worst holdings possible before the last barrel once again. But then again, this is a spot where my second barrel is my last, so I'm going to just hope that he folds most of his holdings right away. I'm gonna raise small. I have such a good hand, and he could just go broke with a weaker pair of jacks here, because I feel like this is the type of board that I am going to check, not check raise, but just raise quite a lot as a bluff in a blind battle, and I think he feels that way about my game too. Decided to check call that board. I didn't feel like this guy would do any big folds if I started trying to bluff at it, so that's why I just took the passive route, and it did not work. Plus the fact that my draw is a bit better because I do have 2 overcards. If I'm only having like 6, 7 here, I would play it a bit more aggressively because my draw is just less good, and I hit something that is going to be good less often because a pair is not going to be good often. But here, if I hit a 10 or a jack, it's going to be good often, so I don't mind balancing that draw with a like check calling range that I'm gonna take from time to time instead of just playing it super fast aggressively and trying to bluff my old stack, because I cannot do that every single hand, of course. And yeah, I did feel that here in a lot of spots I am just going to like call, because this is an obvious situation where I have really good showdown value. I don't want him to fold worse hands if I raise, and I don't mind any free card falling because I do have the biggest draw there. But I think that he can make something pretty stupid, because I feel this is the type of board where he's gonna like sometimes rebluff at me, sometimes go broke with a worse jack, like I said. So I felt like there was a lot more value in raising there and trying to go broke. He could have worse flush draw from time to time. Since this is blind battle, if it was like under the gun against button, I'm definitely not raising that, pretty much never ever ever. But in that situation, I think it's a better way to go. The resting spot with the jacks, I think I have to call that, and I don't have any more option basically, for pretty obvious reasons. Here I don't really want a dunk lead because I feel like he could raise me as a bluff from time to time on that board with like a gutter with naked 9 or 10. And I could dunk lead once again, but I don't really like the play. I think I'm going to check raise, actually try to turn my hand into a bluff. He's not going to fall to have a flush a lot. And now I don't really have value in betting anyway. I am going to check raise once again, I think. I'm going to fold that right away. I have exactly what I'm representing, and it makes it so easy for him to play the hand perfectly for the rest of the hand. And he could barrel, if like a second barrel, if he has nothing at all, and expect me to fold jacks and queens a lot. And I don't have the jack of clubs as well, so if any clubs fall, my equity is pretty much dead. So I'm just gonna fold on the flop. That's all those things that I'm talking about is always stuff that you want to be looking at when you're debating between one close thing or the other, basically. Uh, and in that spot, I felt like all those small details leaned towards me folding. And it's those small details that are most often gonna differentiate a good player from a great player from a bad player, whatever. Yeah, I'm just gonna call down, representing that I have ace X, hoping that he just values himself with ace king anyways. Here, this is kind of annoying, but yeah, what can I do? This guy has been playing a bit more aggressively than I thought he would, so he's kind of been abusing me in position, especially on that table since he has position, and I kind of didn't do enough about it. I think I should have seen that coming a bit earlier, but yeah, I was busy doing stuff, so I'm gonna do that later. But yeah, I just have to keep in mind that I'm gonna have to adjust my ranges a bit, play a bit tighter, just because he looks like he knows how to take advantage of his position on me on that table, and he realized that I'm playing really aggressively. I was keeping with my plan of slow playing here, hoping that he either values himself or try to bluff me out. Now that he checks, I think he's gonna have like nothing most of the time. Don't have time. I don't know how much to bet basically. I'm just gonna. I think he's just folding every single time. I'm gonna put a nice healthy bet out there, uh, hoping that he calls. Because I do, like, when I call twice on that drive board, I do have a made hand more often than anything else, basically, which is pretty obvious to both of us. So, but my made hand is often pretty weak, but when I bet big on the river, it's no longer that often a weak made hand, unless I'm trying to turn it into a bluff, which is not going to happen that often because, like, I'm probably just checking back any ace anyway, any weak ace. I just felt like he had nothing at all, but still by slow playing flop and turn here, I made more money than if I just raised the flop, unless I was trying to get into a leveling war by raising the flop. But I don't think this is kind of flop where he's gonna start leveling himself and like think that I'm full of crap and then come back with a click it back and stuff like that. I'm going to take that line hoping that this kind of stuff happens on some boards. A bit more drawy boards, a bit of board where I could represent a bit more hands basically than just like nothing at all there. Like deuces and threes. I just prefer slow playing and keeping my range a bit weaker for the rest of the hand, hoping that he like tries to push me out a6 by betting really big on the river with a bluff, or just try to hope I call down with a6 when he has his king and he just jams basically. Here I'm definitely not folding. Like I said, this guy looks like this is kind of disturbing. He did pick up on me being pretty aggressive. I'm gonna shove. Yeah, he did pick up on me being really aggressive. Hence why he's going broke with ace queen there. Come on, hold one time. Come on, hold two times. Two times. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm definitely going broke. And he's going broke with ace queen, which is perfectly fine in that aggressive of a game. But I just have to take a mental note that this guy is definitely understands that this game is getting played really aggressively, and he's gonna play back at me. And it took me a bit more time than usual to notice that, so he kind of got away with uh, a couple of hold, hold twice. Thank you. Yeah, he kind of got away with a couple of small bluffs, I think, that I should have picked up earlier, but whatever. I was kind of busy talking and stuff. Here, pretty standard. I don't really like 4-bet getting it in. I much rather 4-bet get it in if I was on the cutoff, because he's going broke with a lot of weaker hands if I'm from the cutoff or the button. But in those positions, I think this guy is good enough to polarize his range a lot more, thus not going broke with like tens, and maybe even not with jacks. Some guys, I don't know how polarized this guy's range is going to be as far as going broke pre-flop in those positions. Um, but I think most good regulars will understand that going broke with jacks from those positions is rarely a good thing. So I'd much rather keep his weaker hands in the mix by just flatting pre-flop and then playing post-flop, which is going to be perfectly doable, makeable with a pair of queens, of course, and I flop a set, so I decided to slow play the flop because I look like ace queen, blah blah blah. He could try to bluff and stuff. I'm a big slow player most of the time, so and he just shoves the turn and I just snap, and he has a flush draw and I win, which pretty much sums up the end. And I'm getting 3-bet quite a lot. I should just start calming down on the opens, but I do have some pretty nice hands. I could have c-bet that, but I think like I don't have any clue who that guy is, so I don't really like starting to like barrel off my ass against guys that I really don't know what they're doing. and I feel like my ace jack high is gonna be good pretty often too, if he just decides not to do anything. So this is good. And I decided to squeeze that. I think with the like king queen offsuit is king queen suited. I'm obviously just calling there multi-way, but king queen offsuit I feel like I have some nice blockers. Calling is definitely a mistake. Being multi-way, it's not gonna be playable. Uh, I feel like there is nice money. I just feel like this standard spot cool squeeze spot basically, and I get shoved by the big blind who woke up with a hand. Of course, that's how I run, man. And here the ace high board against the fish, with the queen getting there, so he's gonna have showdown value with all of his Broadway, and I'm not even sure if he's folding any of it. At Cheddar, I'm just gonna give up. Gotta check that. Don't think I have any value. I could bet big here. He checked the river pretty quick. I'm gonna go ahead and try to represent a jack. I think if I overbet, he's gonna fold anything but a jack, and that's what happens. He just checked the river so quick. I did not think he had a jack ever, basically. Another good timing tale to have in your repertoire. Non, c'est un mot anglais, tout. But yeah, like normally someone who hits a four strike there is gonna be at least a bit surprised to hit it, and it's gonna take at least like 4 or 5 seconds. But before checking, it's gonna be like, oh, do I lead? What I do? Check. He checks, but when he snap checks, he's normally just trying to get his hand to showdown. And I don't want him to just call curiously with an ace here, which he could definitely do, being pretty bad. So I just overbet, and I feel like even a bad player won't call an overbet without a jack here, especially again actually that kind of guy, because it's just gonna scare them. So I think this bluff is going to work close to 100% of the time. I think this is definitely something that you have to do, and something that you have to keep in mind, and still like stay awake during a hand, even when you gave up on a hand. I kind of gave up like on the turn. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna win that. But when you stay awake during those ends, you are gonna see some spots from time to time that, okay, finally this is a good card, so I can try to represent something. I could like check raise this one because of that card falling and stuff. Always stay awake and always see every single possibility. Yep. During a hand that is going to help you take down a bit more than your fair share of pots. Here, I don't think he's calling twice ever with a worst hand. I'm not even sure if he's calling twice with ace 10, so I'm just gonna check. Hope he sometimes tries a weird bluff on the river. And I'm gonna flop top set once again on that table. I'm gonna check raise it. I think this is a nice board to check raise it, because I'm check raising so many gut shots, so many flush draws. Being that deep nest, this is a board where I'm definitely like gonna check raise a gut shot and then fire out my old stack no matter what happens. But yeah, I decided to check back that turn because since, like I said, I don't have two streets of value like ever. I just want to keep weaker hands in the mix and have him do something stupid on the river sometimes, or just call me down with like something weaker on the river because he's not scared of me firing another barrel because it's the last barrel on the river, so he's gonna call a bit more with weaker hands basically when the draw doesn't get there, but the draw got there, so it kind of sucked. And now I lead my tens because I don't want it to be checked around again, because it would suck. Come on, do something, Josh. Josh. Oh, he's requesting time. He's at least thinking about it. This really looked like a tough decision. Tough fold for Josh. Kind of sucks because I'm like bluffing that turn spot 100% of the time when it arises. But when I but it's still, yeah, it works every time, so I don't have to expect to be paid off when I do have something anyways. Fold. I'm gonna check that for obvious reasons. I'm gonna call that for other obvious reasons. I am going to check all that. I don't think I have any more options. And this hand, I think I do look like a jack a lot. I don't have any air in my range, like no air at all. And I don't think he's ever calling with worse, but I still feel that turning my hand into a bluff is absolutely useless. So I'm just going to check, and here I'm going to lead. Yeah, he's probably check calling. I could have like pot and hope that he folds those kind of hands, but it's pretty optimistic. And here, I'm going to make a bluff like that from time to time. This is not 100% a king. Because I so look like a king, I'm going to like check call jack queen, jack 10, queen 10 from time to time there, and then lead out. And then I kind of forget that this guy actually knows how to play really well. And this absolutely sucked being that deep. I didn't think about it because I didn't think that someone could do something like that. I'm going to call. I expect that he shoves most of the time on the river. Uh, or just places a like close to pot bet most of the time on the river. Bottom line is I cannot have this. This is absolutely horrible on his part. Actually, I called the turn because I kind of felt like he was going to give up from time to time that type of situation. But this is a spot where we are so deep and I don't have the nuts in my range at all. Uh, and he can represent aces, ace kings, or eights very well himself. Where against the line that I've taken, I am going to have like some weakish draw or king x naked, like every single time that I think he has to raise a bit more on the turn and just shove the river. And I would have probably have folded even though I know that it's a possible play for him to make, just because I'm not sure if he's ever making it, and if I call down here against someone who is not even thinking about doing that kind of stuff, I'm making a gigantic mistake, like an horrible mistake. So I have to be really sure that someone is capable of pulling such a bluff, trying to make me fold king X basically, which is not like that likely to be. But then I was pretty scared because that guy did show us some uh, a tendency to know how to play basically. But I still called the turn hoping that sometimes I would fold the river and make it easier to play. And sometimes he was on that kind of bluff that he had and he was going to give up from time to time. Kind of looks weird to like call the turn and then give up on the river, just check fold the river in that type of spot because I'm not winning the pot that often, but I don't have to win it that often and I'm gonna fold from time to time on the river. And uh, he's gonna give up from time to time, like you saw. But I still really like my turn dunk lead. Like I said, I'm gonna pull that bluff, so I don't always have a king. My image here really helps me, because he's gonna think that I'm full of shit, that I'm gonna have a naked flush draw or Broadway gut shot from time to time because he knows that I can pull that kind of bluff. I think he knows that actually. I think he's gonna think like that, which is probably why he raised me. If I'm a lot tighter, it kind of sucks to dunk lead here because you just always have a king. So just dunk lead more as a bluff, like dunk lead turn and river as a bluff here, and you're gonna have a lot of aces getting like ace queen is even gonna fold if you're a big nit, and you're against someone who can make big folds just because you always have a king. But with me having a pretty loose image, I think I can get called by a lot worse by like I said, ace queen ace jack type of hands for two streets, especially with the two flush draws being there. So that makes my range a bit more draw heavy basically. So I was planning on betting turn plus river as value, and I would do that as a bluff from time to time against people that I think would um, call me down with it. As a bluff against people who I think are gonna fold an ace basically on the river, and as for value against people I think are gonna call an ace. And given the fact that I know that this guy understood that this game is pretty aggressive, I feel like he could not find a way to fold ace queen or ace jack on the river. So I like my play. But you see that like all my lines, I'm gonna vary a lot of my lines, even though like I have not played 2,000 hands against that guy. This is basically the first session I play against that guy. But just from what I saw from him, right away I adjust my ranges and my plays and my lines a lot, just because of what he has shown me so far, and adjusting and being able to I only have adjust and head, but there's another word for that. Uh, to it's gonna come back, but yeah, being able to adapt basically to your opponents is a very, very, very important skill in those games to have. There, I basically flopped the nuts, and I obviously gonna bet it. I don't really like him check raising me, uh, because if he's going broke, my equity is not that good. But then again, like, none of my draw will be well concealed if I... Oh, two pairs I'm gonna call. Yeah, none of my draw is going to be well concealed if I hit them. And he could go broke sometime with like a weaker flush draw, which I have crushed. Something like King Queen of Clubs. And I just feel like this is the type of hand that I do want to play fast, even though I have the initiative. Just because, like I said, none of my draw is going to be well concealed. And my equity is mostly on the flop. Uh, so I could have just called the check raise, because I did feel like it was pretty strong most of the time, but I do so have the nuts. And you could have stuff like 8-9 from time to time, I think. Uh, I'm still not sure. I could just call, but then again, every time I hit, I'm not getting any more value. I could get some more value, but not that often. I think I prefer playing that one fast. But this is pretty close, and under a bit different circumstances on some different boards, I could have tried to play that one slow as well. The more I think about it, let me think about it. I'm gonna come back a bit more because I'm doing dumb stuff over there. Don't know where I see, but if I am to give up, but yeah, whatever. Hope I'm good. I'm not. Here I think I have to snap if he bets, even though he's gonna have a jack a lot. Like, everything missed, and there are a lot of gut shots on that exact board. I think if the board was jack 6-6 jack, it would be easier fold, but there we have like 8-9, 8-10 jack, no, 9-10, 9. Anyways, all of those gut shots that missed, and he did recognize that, and it's a very nice value by him. If he's valuing those type of hands, my call kind of sucks a bit more, but then again, I still think he's going to try the bluff from time to time, hoping that I fold like my king highs. So I don't mind it. I probably should have just checked back the flop, but I was kind of busy elsewhere. Basically, to take the best possible decision here, I would have to know what's his check raising range here. Is it really strong, kind of semi-strong, like over pairs, or really weak? And the more I think about it, I might be a bit results oriented there, but the more I think about it, the more I think it's going to be really strong. I think if he decides to check an overpair, he's gonna check call it more often than not. That, or like King Queen of Clubs, like I said. I think if he decides to check the flop, he's going to check call it more often than not. So I think it's going to be really strong with like sets, two pairs, and straights very often. And I think I could just flat and sometimes use all of the possible straight cards to turn my hand into a bluff on later streets. Use position plus possible ways that the board and the hand could develop, so I could sometimes end up bluffing him out of all of his possible strong hands. So that could be a better option than just playing it fast, because of the reasons that I've mentioned before. But this is really close, and I'm really not sure which play is best. Because once again, I'm really not sure about this exact check raising range, basically. I think that's pretty much gonna be it for the video. I'm getting kind of tired, and yep, I think this is going to make for two nice parts. I'm going to call that. Hope I flub the nuts before I go. Miss and see what happens. But yeah, I'm going to just quit the tables and and tell you that I hope you have enjoyed all of that, and give me feedback on that if you want more of these type of videos. I know it's kind of different, and most of the time we did get a whole lot of interesting spots. I had a bit less time to go into detail about them, but yeah, it is different. So no, that's bad. That's total mistake by me. I didn't see that yet, that amount, but now it's getting nice. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much a 3. No. So, so long, suckers.